My mom's dating her cousin. I moved out because I couldn't pretend it was okay anymore. When my mom started dating her cousin, I stayed silent for years, watching, pretending, and breaking inside. But there comes a point where silence becomes unbearable, and I finally hit mine. It was one of those family holidays that seemed innocent enough at first, one of those trips you look back on and think, if only I had known. We were going to a place my mom had often talked about, a place she had spent much of her childhood. I always thought of it as this magical, almost nostalgic place for her, filled with memories and family connections I could never fully understand. But that was about to change. We stayed at a small cottage by the lake, the kind that made you feel like time had stood still. My mom was in her element, smiling and reminiscing about her younger years, telling us stories about her friends and relatives who used to live there. There was a sense of warmth, like everything was exactly as it should be. We had always been a tight-knit family, but I had a feeling this trip would be different from the others. The way she talked about this place felt almost like she was reconnecting with a part of herself that she had left behind. The day we met her cousin was one of those ordinary days that you don't remember until later, when everything feels like it's been turned upside down. He was tall, with a welcoming smile and a laugh that seemed to fill the room. He had this easygoing charm, the kind that made you feel instantly comfortable, like you had known him for years. But there was something in the air that day, something I couldn't quite place, a tension I couldn't name. As the day went on, I noticed little moments, the way my mom's eyes lit up when he spoke, the way they would glance at each other in a way that felt different. It wasn't anything obvious, just small things that went unnoticed by most. But I couldn't ignore it. My mom had always been affectionate, but this was something else. It was a quiet, unspoken connection that I had never seen before. Then came the revelation. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the fact that something felt off. My parents were in the kitchen, chatting while my younger siblings ran around outside. The door creaked open and my mom stepped in with her cousin by her side. They were laughing about something, but the moment they saw me, the room fell silent. My mom's face flushed a hint of nervousness, creeping into her usual composure. Her cousin stood there awkwardly for a second before finally speaking. So he began, his voice light, but there was an edge to it. "I don't know if your mom's told you yet, but we're dating." The words hung in the air like a bombshell, their weight sinking into my chest. My mind raced as I tried to process what I had just heard. Dating my mom and her cousin? I didn't even know how to respond. I could see my mom's hands shaking slightly as she tried to maintain her usual calm demeanor, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. I could see she was hoping for acceptance, even though I didn't understand why this felt so wrong to me. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at them, my mind reeling, trying to piece together how something that felt so unnatural could have slipped under the radar for so long. My mom was in love with her cousin, and somehow I was supposed to just accept that. The days that followed were a blur. There was a lot of awkwardness, too much silence, and too many forced smiles. My mom tried to act like everything was normal, but I could tell she was struggling with my reaction. She would catch my eyes from across the room, her expression softening, as if she was searching for some kind of reassurance, some sign that I wasn't as disturbed as I felt. But I couldn't give her that. I just couldn't. It felt like I was losing something I had always taken for granted. My mom's stability, her sense of what was right. This wasn't right. I told myself I was being dramatic. After all, they weren't really blood relatives, right? He was adopted, which in some twisted way seemed to justify everything. But the more I tried to tell myself that, the more it felt like a lie. Adoption didn't change the fact that they were family. And family shouldn't date each other. That was just wrong. At night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how this had happened. How had I not seen the signs earlier? My mom had always been so independent, so strong. But now she seemed different. There was something in her eyes when she looked at him, something I couldn't quite grasp, but that I couldn't ignore either. It wasn't like I hated him. Her cousin, he was kind, polite, and easy to talk to. He made my mom happy, which deep down I could recognize. But my mind couldn't reconcile that with the fact that he was her cousin. I tried to push the feelings down, to bury them deep inside me, but no matter how much I told myself to let it go, the discomfort never faded. It just grew. The hardest part was seeing my mom so happy. She had been through so much in her life, so many sacrifices and struggles, and for the first time in a long while, she was genuinely glowing. I wanted to be happy for her, to see this relationship through her eyes, but I couldn't. Every time they were together, I felt this knot tighten in my stomach. It wasn't jealousy. It was something much darker, something that felt like betrayal. But how could I tell her that? How could I tell her that seeing her with him made me feel like I was losing her, like the foundation of everything I had ever known was crumbling beneath my feet? So I kept quiet. I smiled and nodded when they were around, pretending that everything was fine, pretending that I had accepted it. But deep down I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of my own emotions. This was only the beginning. Little did I know the journey ahead would test my relationship with my mom in ways I could never have imagined. The worst part was I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to stop feeling what I felt. The days after the initial revelation felt like a slow-motion nightmare. At first, I tried to bury my feelings, telling myself that I was just overreacting, that I was being selfish for not wanting my mom to be happy. But every time I saw them together, every time I caught my mom smiling at her cousin, with that look like he was the only person in the world who mattered to her, it felt like a punch in the gut. I remember one afternoon we were all sitting around the dining table eating lunch. The sun was shining through the windows, casting soft shadows on the walls. It should have been a peaceful, happy moment, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. My mom and her cousin were sitting next to each other, talking in that quiet, intimate way that people do when they're completely comfortable with each other. I tried to focus on the conversation, but my mind kept drifting. Every time they exchanged a smile or a touch, I felt like I was being suffocated. I could see my younger siblings oblivious to the tension that was slowly eating away at me. They didn't understand. They didn't see what I saw. To them, it was just another happy couple, another part of our family that they accepted without question. But for me, it felt like a betrayal of my childhood, of the family dynamics I had always known. My mom had always been the strong, protective figure in my life, the one I could rely on. But now seeing her with him, it was like she was becoming someone else, someone I didn't recognize. At night, I would lie in bed, replaying everything in my head. What had happened? Why had I reacted this way? I tried to convince myself that it wasn't about him, that it wasn't about the fact that he was her cousin. It was about the shift in our family, the way everything felt different now. But even that didn't feel like the whole truth. There was something about their relationship that I couldn't accept. Something that made me feel like I was losing my mom in a way I couldn't explain. I started avoiding them. I would stay in my room more often, pretending to be busy, avoiding the moments when I had to face the reality of their relationship. It wasn't that I didn't want my mom to be happy. It was that I couldn't stand the way her happiness seemed to come at the cost of my own peace of mind. I hated the way she looked at him, the way she talked to him like he was her everything. I hated the way he seemed to fit into our family so effortlessly, like he had always been a part of it, when I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong with their connection. I knew it wasn't healthy to bottle everything up, but I couldn't bring myself to talk about it. How could I explain to my mom that the man she had fallen in love with her cousin was tearing me apart, even though I knew she was happier than she had been in years? I didn't want to hurt her. But at the same time, I felt like I was suffocating in silence. I wanted to scream to tell her how much it hurt to see them together, to tell her that I felt like I was losing her. But the words never came. It wasn't just about their relationship, though. It was also about the way my mom had changed. She was no longer the woman I had always known. She had become someone who was so caught up in her love for him that I felt like I was being pushed aside. She wasn't the same person who used to be there for me when I needed her. She wasn't the same person who would drop everything to support me. Now it felt like everything revolved around him, around their relationship. I began to resent the way she would talk about him, how she would mention his name in almost every conversation. It was like she was trying to convince me that this was normal, that it was okay. But it wasn't okay for me. I wanted to yell at her, to tell her that I wasn't ready to accept this, that I needed time, that I needed her to see me again. Not as someone who was expected to just swallow this new reality without question, but as her child, who was struggling with the fact that her mother was dating her cousin. I hated the way my thoughts spiraled out of control. The more I tried to suppress them, the louder they became. Every little thing about their relationship seemed to trigger a wave of anxiety inside me. I would see them holding hands, laughing together, and all I could feel was this overwhelming sense of discomfort. It was like I was watching a version of my family that wasn't mine, a version that didn't belong in the life I had known. I began to pull away from my mom. I would avoid looking her in the eyes when she tried to talk to me about him, about their future. It felt like every conversation was a reminder of something I couldn't change. Something that was slowly eating away at the bond we had once shared. She had always been my rock, my unwavering support. But now I felt like I was losing her to him. It wasn't that I hated him. He had always been kind to me, always tried to include me in their plans. But it was the fact that he was her cousin, and that changed everything. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I tried to tell myself that I was being selfish, that I should just accept this for her sake, but the guilt only made everything worse. I felt like I was trapped between two worlds, the world where my mom was happy and in love, and the world where I felt betrayed and alone. And every day I found myself drowning a little more in that silence, in those unspoken words that I couldn't bring myself to say. It wasn't just about their relationship anymore. It was about how I had changed, how I had become someone who couldn't even look at his own mother without feeling a rush of anger and sadness. It was about how everything I had once taken for granted, her love, her attention, her presence was slowly slipping away, replaced by something I couldn't understand, something I couldn't accept. The worst part was, I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to stop feeling the way I felt, how to fix the rift that was growing between us. I didn't want to lose my mom. I didn't want to lose her to him. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more I tried to bury my feelings, the more it felt like everything was slipping through my fingers. The silence between my mom and me had become unbearable. Every day felt like I was walking on eggshells, careful not to say anything that might make things worse. But at the same time, the weight of unspoken words crushed me from the inside. I couldn't pretend anymore. The tension had become so thick I could feel it in every corner of the house, in every glance I avoided, in every conversation where I stayed quiet, hoping that somehow magically everything would go back to normal. But normal was gone. The relationship between my mom and her cousin, it wasn't just a shift in their dynamic, it was a tectonic shift that rattled the very foundation of our family. The more I tried to hold on to what we had, the more I realized that I was fighting a losing battle. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't something that would just blow over in time. This was her life now, and it was only getting more real as time passed. It all came to a head one evening. I had been home for a few days after a short trip, and my mom had invited her cousin over for dinner. She had spent the entire afternoon preparing his favorite dishes, even asking me to set the table in a way that she knew he liked. I could tell she was excited, and that made me feel sick to my stomach. The last thing I wanted was to be there when they were together, but I couldn't avoid it. Not without making things worse. Dinner started off like any other family dinner with awkward small talk and the usual chatter, but I could feel my patience wearing thin. Every time I looked at them, I felt that same sickening knot in my stomach. My mom was practically glowing, talking about their future plans, how they were looking at houses, how he made her feel alive again. And all I could think was, this isn't my mom anymore. She was someone different. She was someone who had chosen him, and that choice meant that I had to take a back seat. After the main course, they disappeared into the living room to talk privately. I stayed at the table staring at my unfinished meal, my mind spiraling. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep swallowing this bitterness and pretending like everything was fine. It wasn't fine. It hadn't been fine for a long time. I stormed into the living room, my heart pounding, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and fear. When I entered, they both looked up at me, surprise and confusion written on their faces. I didn't care. I was done being silent. "Mom, I can't do this anymore." I blurted out, my voice shaking but forceful. "I don't understand how you can be with him. How can you date your cousin and just expect everything to be okay? It's messed up. I can't watch you do this. I can't pretend that I'm okay with it." There was a moment of stunned silence. My mom's eyes widened, her expression faltering. Her cousin, who had been sitting next to her, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I saw his jaw tighten, but I didn't care. This wasn't about him. It wasn't about anyone else. It was about me and my mom and the fact that our bond had been ripped apart by something I couldn't accept. "Why do you have to make this so difficult?" My mom finally said, her voice quiet but strained. She looked hurt, like my words had physically hurt her, and that only made the guilt I was already feeling worse. "I thought you wanted me to be happy. This is what makes me happy." "But it's not just about you," I shouted, the frustration bubbling over. What about me? What about the family we were? You've changed. You've become someone else, and I don't know how to deal with that. You've chosen him over everything, and I feel like I'm losing you." Her face hardened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something. Maybe regret, maybe anger. But then it was gone. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "I know this is hard for you, but I can't keep living for everyone else. I deserve to be happy too." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "You're dating your cousin, Mom. Your cousin. How is that normal? How can you just pretend like everything is fine when it's so messed up?" My voice wavered with the emotion that was spilling out of me. "I've tried so hard to accept it. I've tried to be supportive, but I can't. I just can't. It feels wrong. It feels like I'm losing you, and I don't know how to fix it." Her eyes softened then, and she reached out as if to comfort me, but I flinched back. I wasn't ready for her comfort. I wasn't ready to forgive her for what felt like the destruction of everything I had known. I wasn't ready to let go of the mother I had once had. "Please," I said, my voice cracking, my heart breaking. "I don't want to lose you, but I don't know how to be okay with this." For the longest time, there was silence. Then her cousin stood up, his face full of confusion and defensiveness. "I don't understand what the big deal is," he said, his tone rising with frustration. "We're happy together. What's wrong with that?" I snapped at him before I could stop myself, my anger directed at him as much as it was at the situation. "Your family. You're supposed to be my family, not this." The words were out before I could stop them, and I instantly regretted them. But they were the truth. This was not the family I had grown up with. This was not the family I had thought I knew. My mom's face crumpled, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered, almost pleading. "I never wanted you to feel like this." But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The rift between us was no longer something I could ignore. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how much I loved my mom, no matter how much I wanted to repair the relationship, I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't erase the truth that had been hanging between us for years. "I don't know what to do anymore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt lost, like I had nowhere to turn, and that was the breaking point, the moment when everything between us, my mom and me, our family, changed forever. After that night, everything changed. It wasn't like we had a dramatic fallout with yelling and slammed doors that echoed through the house. It was quieter than that. More painful in a way, like a slow leak that drains you drop by drop until one day you realize you're completely empty. My mom and I didn't argue after the confrontation. We didn't even talk much. It was like we'd made a silent agreement to keep our distance, to avoid saying anything that might reopen the wound we'd both bled from. She still cooked breakfast in the mornings, but she stopped calling me down with her usual cheerful voice. I'd wake up to the smell of eggs or toast or her signature coffee blend, but there would be no warmth behind it anymore. It was all mechanical, like two strangers who shared a space but had long stopped sharing a life. Her cousin, no, her boyfriend, I forced myself to say, was still around. Less often, at least, when I was home, but his presence hung in the air even when he wasn't there. His favorite mug on the counter, his jacket hanging by the door, his voice echoing in my memory from that night, asking, "What's the big deal?" with a tone so dismissive it made my skin crawl even now. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was knowing that she had made her choice. And it wasn't me. I didn't stop loving her. That would have been easier. But I did start resenting her in a way I never thought possible. I resented that she had broken our bond for the sake of someone who should never have crossed that line in the first place. I resented that she kept pretending like our life could move forward without addressing the gaping hole she'd left in it. She tried a few times to reach out. Small, clumsy efforts. She left notes on the fridge asking if I'd be home for dinner. Texted me random things like, "Saw your favorite movies on TV tonight." Once she even knocked on my door and asked if I wanted to go out for a walk like we used to. I said no every time. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't know how to be close to her anymore. How do you sit next to someone who feels like a stranger but still holds all your childhood memories in her smile? How do you hold a conversation with the person who raised you, knowing she's in love with someone you can't even look in the eye? Weeks turned into months. I started staying out more. Found excuses to be busy, work, friends, school, anything that kept me from being home when he was around. My mom noticed, of course, but she didn't push. I think she was afraid. Afraid that if she pressed too hard, I might vanish completely. and maybe I would have. There were nights I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was the bad guy. Was I being selfish? Was I the one tearing our family apart by refusing to accept her relationship? She was happy. Wasn't that what mattered? Did it really make me such a bad person to think her happiness came at the cost of something deeply wrong? But no matter how much I tried to convince myself to let it go, the pit in my stomach never left. The image of them together still felt unnatural, like something in the universe had been rearranged in a way that didn't make sense. The love she had for him, was it love or desperation? Loneliness? Denial? Or maybe I just couldn't see it because I didn't want to. One evening I came home to find the living room rearranged. The old family portraits had been replaced with newer ones, pictures of the two of them smiling arms around each other, looking like the kind of couple you'd see in a lifestyle magazine. There was one photo that hit me like a gut punch. Him standing behind her in the kitchen, his hands on her shoulders, both of them laughing, like nothing in the world could touch them. I stood there for a long time staring at that frame. Something in me cracked. She came into the room holding a cup of tea and froze when she saw me looking. Her smile faltered, and she placed the cup down quietly, as if afraid to startle me. "You don't like them?" she said softly. It wasn't a question. "No," I replied. My voice was hollow, exhausted. "I don't." She nodded slowly, like she had expected that answer. "I just wanted to have something that felt real again. After everything." "I get that," I said, and I meant it. I did understand in a strange, painful way. But understanding didn't mean acceptance. It didn't mean approval. "I wish you could see what I see in him," she whispered. "I wish you could see what I see when I look at you now," I whispered back. She blinked, taken aback. For the first time in a long time, our eyes met. Not just glanced past each other, but truly connected. And what I saw in her gaze wasn't anger or guilt. It was grief. She missed me. Maybe even more than I missed her. "I never meant to lose you," she said, her voice cracking. "You didn't lose me," I replied. "You just made it impossible for me to stay." I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because it was true. That night I packed a bag and left. I didn't move out completely. I didn't have the means for that yet. But I stayed with a friend for a while. I needed space. I needed to breathe again. And I think deep down she knew it was the only way we had a chance at ever healing. From that distance, I could finally start to process everything. I wasn't sure if I'd ever be okay with her choices. I wasn't sure if we'd ever go back to how we were, but I knew I needed time. And she needed to understand that love, no matter how powerful, doesn't give you the right to rewrite what family means. Months passed. Living away from home gave me the breathing room I hadn't realized I was desperate for. The silence that used to suffocate me now felt like comfort. I didn't have to listen for footsteps in the hallway, dreading the possibility that it was him coming through the door. I didn't have to tiptoe around my feelings, stuffing them into smaller boxes just to keep the peace. For the first time in a long while, I could just be. But healing doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like healing. Some days I'd feel okay, like I was finally past the worst of it. Other days I'd wake up with this heavy ache in my chest, missing my mother so much it hurt. Not the version of her I'd left behind, but the woman who used to tuck me in at night and kiss my forehead even when we'd fought. The one who taught me how to ride a bike and dance in the kitchen when no one was watching. I missed her. I mourned her. We texted occasionally. She'd send things like, "I hope you're eating enough," or "I saw your favorite cereals on sale." I'd reply with thanks or a thumbs up emoji because I didn't know how to say I still love you, but I don't know how to forgive you yet. Once on my birthday, she left a small gift at my friend's place, a book I'd mentioned in passing months ago. Tucked inside was a note in her handwriting. "You're the best thing I ever did. I hope one day we can find our way back to each other." I cried for a long time after reading that. Not because it fixed anything, but because it reminded me she hadn't stopped trying, even in the smallest ways. I started therapy around that time. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe validation, maybe someone to tell me I was right to feel so messed up. But therapy did something more important. It helped me unravel everything I'd kept buried. The confusion, the guilt, the anger, the betrayal. One session, my therapist asked me something that hit me harder than I expected. "What would you want to say to your mom if you weren't afraid of hurting her or being hurt?" At first, I didn't know how to answer, but over time, the words came. "I wanted you to choose me. I wanted you to put our family first. I wanted to believe that the bond between us mattered more than this man. And I still want to believe you didn't mean to break us. Weeks later, I found myself standing in front of our old house again. I didn't plan it. My feet just took me there like muscle memory. I stared at the front door for a while, debating whether to knock. Before I could decide, it opened. She stood there holding a laundry basket, wearing her usual weekend clothes. Her face froze when she saw me, shocked, then cautious. But behind it, I saw hope flicker. "I wasn't sure you'd ever come back," she said softly. "I didn't come to stay," I replied. "But I think I'm ready to talk." We sat on the porch. I couldn't bring myself to go inside, not yet, but it felt like neutral ground. She offered me tea. I declined. It felt surreal, like we were strangers starting from scratch. And maybe we were. "I'm not here to pretend everything's okay," I began, "because it's not. And I still don't understand how you can be with him." She nodded. "I know, but I also know you're still my mom. And I don't want to erase everything we had just because I can't accept this part of your life." Her eyes watered. She looked down, fidgeting with her wedding ring. No, not a wedding ring. Just a simple band she wore on her right hand now. "I'd never noticed it before. I never stopped loving you," she whispered. "Even when you left, I thought about you every day, and I hated that I hurt you. I still do." We sat in silence for a while. Not the tense, awkward kind, but the kind where the air feels heavy with everything unspoken and yet somehow lighter. "I'm still angry," I admitted, "but I think I'm more tired than angry now." She gave a sad smile. "Me too." In that moment, something shifted. Not a full reconciliation, not forgiveness exactly, but an opening, a crack in the wall we'd both built. We didn't hug, we didn't cry in each other's arms like in the movies, but we talked, really talked, about the past, about where things had gone wrong, about how much we missed each other. I left that day feeling something I hadn't in a long time: peace. It didn't mean I suddenly approved of her relationship. That boundary was still there, but I'd started to understand that rejecting him didn't have to mean rejecting her. I could hold both truths: that I loved my mother deeply and that her choices still hurt me. I didn't have to choose between the two. Eventually, I visited again, then again. We found new rhythms. Small steps, watching a show together, going for coffee, talking about things that had nothing to do with him. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Healing isn't linear. Some days still sting, but other days I catch myself laughing with her and thinking, maybe we'll be okay after all. Maybe love isn't always about agreeing. Maybe sometimes it's just about showing up anyway. If this story touched your heart, please like the video so I know you're here listening and feeling it with me. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional, real-life stories about pain, forgiveness, love, and everything in between. Thank you for staying until the end.